Hello and welcome. Thank you for participating in Morehead at Home Skywatching, hosted by Morehead Planetarium and Science Center. My name is Amy Sale. I'm an educator at Morehead. We are a unit of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, located on campus. We also work throughout the state through a number of outreach initiatives like our mobile lab van, summer camp programs, and the annual North Carolina Science Festival. Our mission is to help people better understand science, technology, and health, and we do this through engaging learning opportunities like this live virtual event. We're happy to have you here today for some star stories, and my colleague Nick will get us started.
Thanks, Amy, and welcome everybody to Morehead at Home Skywatching. We're excited you're with us today. You're in luck. You have one of the finest storytellers in the entire world here, Amy Sale. I'm seeing if I can get a reaction out of her on that, but she's fantastic, and we're going to connect some of these stories to what you can actually see up there in the sky. So we're going to do that by using a program that we've used before called Stellarium. It's kind of like a flat screen planetarium where you can simulate what your sky looks like. And we'll be looking at a sky as you would see it tonight over North Carolina. Now, if you're watching from somewhere that's not North Carolina, that is okay. If you're in the southeastern United States, your sky will be similar. If not, you might have to make a couple of adjustments for timing and latitude and things like that. But hopefully this will give you a good look at what our sky looks like. So next time you have a clear, dark night, you could go out and tell some stories of your own. So we do want to answer questions that y'all have. So during our program today, if you have anything you'd like to ask, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. That way you can write your questions in there, and we will try to take some time at the end of the session to talk about those. And I think that means it's about time for us to get started. So here's what I will do. I'm going to share my screen, and you should be able to see Stellarium. If this is your first time joining us, this might look a little bit funny, but we're looking at a three-dimensional sky on a flat screen, so we have to kind of warp it and make it look a little bit different than you would see things outside. But for reference, there's big red letters along our horizon that tell us our directions. So S, we're right now facing towards the south. SW, southwest. West over here. Southeast, and on your left here is east. So that means the top of the sky, the zenith, is almost right in this part of the screen. So you notice that we're here in the daytime. We have our date and time that tell us it's 2020, July 7th, and it's a little bit after 10 a.m. here in North Carolina. But I think we're going to go ahead and change that. We're here to tell star stories. There's only one star in the sky right now. So what do you think, Amy? Should we find some more stars?
Yeah, let's make that bright star of the sun set below the horizon. Let's see the nighttime stars come out.
Okay, so this is something that in the real world, you'd have to wait for every second to move by. But in a program like Stellarium or our planetarium, you can speed things up. So sometimes we become masters of space and time. And this is one of those moments. So eventually, you're going to notice the sky start to change. We're here at about 5 p.m. It looks a whole lot like the sun's moving across the sky, but always remember, really what's happening is our Earth is turning. I'm just kind of speeding up that rotation of our Earth. But here we are. We are starting to have a beautiful sunset and a look at our nighttime sky. So I'm going to take us, maybe a little after 10 p.m. I know that is past bedtime for a lot of us, including myself, but we're here in the summertime. It takes a while for the sky to get truly dark after our sunset. So if you're doing your stargazing in the summer, you kind of have to be a night owl or an early bird. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But one last thing before I kind of show you all what we're going to get into today, we want to change our view. And in the real world, that would be as easy as turning around. But here in Stellarium, I can just hit a button, and instead of facing south, now you notice we're facing north. And if you can't see that in because of my numbers there, I can maybe pull it right up there so that you can see north a little bit better. So it's kind of like you just turned right around. Now east is on your right, west is on your left. And this is important because for our first story that Amy's going to tell you, there's a shape that's best found facing towards the north. And we found it before. Maybe you've even found it before. It's called the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper is part of a larger constellation, but what you're going to look for is 7 bright stars that make up a shape that kind of looks like a big spoon that you dip into a pot of soup. So I can give you a moment to look around. I'm sure you're saying to yourself, Nick, I see lots of groups of 7 stars. Well, I can help you out a little bit. We have in this area 3 stars in the handle and 4 stars in the bowl. The Big Dipper itself right now kind of looks like it's standing on its head. And we'll maybe click on one of these stars here so we can illuminate the whole shape. You notice, as I mentioned, this is part of a larger constellation. The Dipper is the really prominent part that we think about, but there's more to it. And this entire constellation is called Ursa Major, or the Big Bear. But I will pass it over for now to Amy to get us started with the story.
Okay, so in an earlier session, we told a story about this bear. And Nick, can you add the picture of the bear?
Sure.
We told a Greek myth about it, and the myth explains how the bear got that really long tail, because if you all have ever seen bears, you probably know they don't have really long tails like that. What's interesting is that the ancient Greeks weren't the only ones that saw a bear in that part of the sky. Some Native Americans did too. There's a Micmac story told by people native to the northeast part of North America. And they say, yeah, there's a bear, we'll grant you that, in that part of the sky. But those 3 stars, that's not the tail of the bear. Bears don't have long tails like that. They said, no, that's 3 hunters chasing the bear, and they're all birds. So that first star, and Nick, I think you can point it out for us, is Robin, the marksman. So he's got the bow and the arrow. And then behind that, we've got Chickadee, who is the cook, ready to cook the bear. He's got a cooking pot tucked right under his wing. And then behind them all lags Moose Bird, and he just kind of hangs out and waits for everybody else to do all the hard work. Well, it's hard work. They chase this bear all the way from the spring until the fall. In the fall, the hunter's arrows finally pierce the skin of the bear. The blood of the bear falls to the ground and colors the leaves of autumn. And that, say the Micmac, is why maple trees turn red in the fall. Something to think about when you're out this fall, enjoying the beautiful fall leaves. And we wanted to zoom in a little bit. Let's take a look at that handle of the Big Dipper, the 3 birds that are chasing the bear. That middle one, Chickadee, I mentioned he's got a cooking pot tucked under his wing. Let's see if we can get a look at that cooking pot. If we zoom in a little bit, you'll see it's actually 2 stars. Their names are Mizar and Alcor, or if you prefer, Chickadee and his cooking pot. And you can see those with just your eyes, most likely if you have fairly sharp eyesight in a clear, dark enough night. And then if you have a telescope at home, you might also take a look, because you might be able to tell that Mizar is actually 2 stars. And although you won't be able to tell this with your telescope at home, each of those 2 stars is also 2 stars. And Alcor is 2 stars. So there's really 6 stars up there, a sextuple of stars. So a lot more going on in the bend of that Big Dipper handle than you might have suspected at first. Okay, so I think we'll switch back out, get ready for the next story. And for this, we're gonna switch our view. We wanna go to a southern view. And we're also going to need to let the moon rise, because this is going to be a story about how the moon got into the sky. And we've got a poll question for you, because there's 2 different stories I could tell. And I want you all watching right now, if you're watching this live, I want you to choose which story I tell. So we've got a question for you. Which one would you like to hear more? Would you like to hear a story that involves a spider family? Or would you like to hear a story about water creatures? And so you all choose. And Nick, I don't know, if we end up with a tie, I think you're gonna have to be the tiebreaker. So
I can shoulder that burden because I know that both of them are very good. So maybe we'll have a preference.
Oh, okay. We had a fairly clear preference for the story about the water creatures. Okay, so as a bonus, this story doesn't only involve how the moon got into the sky, it's also about how the sun got into the sky. And I don't know, Nick, do you think we should zoom in on the moon while we tell the story?
Let's do it. So you might have noticed that we're here at about 11:30 p.m. now, so way past bedtime, but the moon rose over here kind of between the east and the southeast tonight. So if you have a big tree in the way, you might not see the moon until a little bit later, but for now we can just zoom in on it.
All right, so I've got a story for you from Africa, from Nigeria, and some of you may be familiar with it. It's a pretty famous story, and I'll tell you a short version that I really like. Okay, so according to this story, Sun and Moon were a married couple, and they lived together in a house. And Sun, he was great friends with Water, and Sun would go visit Water all the time. But Water would never come visit Sun and Moon. And Sun asked one day, Water, how come you never visit Sun and Moon and me in my house? And Water said, well, Sun, I'm afraid your house is just not big enough for me and all my friends. So Sun said, well, we'll build a bigger house. So Sun went back to Moon and they got busy. They hammered away for months until they built a really big house. And then Sun called out to Water, Water, come visit me and Moon. And Water called back, I don't know, Sun, is your house really big enough for me and all my friends? And Sun said, oh, yes. And then Sun and Moon waited at the threshold with great anticipation, and they watched as a blue ribbon of water came across the land, winding through the fields, and started to swirl among their feet. And Water said as he came in, Sun, are you sure your house is big enough for me and all my friends? And Sun said, oh, yes, keep coming. And right then, a sly little crab came in and gave a nip to Moon's heel. Ooh, she didn't like that. So she hopped up on a table, and Sun thought he better hop up with her. And Water kept coming, and Water said to Sun, Sun, are you sure your house is big enough for me and all my friends? And Sun said, oh, yes, keep coming. And right then, a hippopotamus floated in and squashed Moon against the wall. Ooh, she didn't like that. So she hopped out the window up to the roof, and Sun thought, he better hop up with his wife. So he hopped up too. And Water said, Sun, are you sure your house is big enough for me and all my friends? And Sun said, yes, but is that about it now? And Water said, just a few more. And right then a whale came by. And Sun and Moon looked at each other. And Moon shook her head and she leaped up into the sky. And Sun thought, ooh, he better follow too. So he went up as well. And that is why when you look at Earth, there's water everywhere. There are rivers and streams and lakes and oceans. Sun and Moon, you'll never find them here on Earth. They jumped into the sky for their own safety.
I like that one.
Okay, so that requires a science. You've probably gathered already from listening that these stories were not necessarily meant to be scientific explanations for how things came to be. So Nick, would you like to give us a more scientific explanation of how Moon got into the sky?
Sure. Even though it would be a really cool story, the moon did not jump into the sky, but in a way, that's not too far from the truth. The best idea that we have right now about how our moon got into the sky is that there was a cosmic collision early in the formation of our solar system, where the early Earth was very likely struck by an object. And when I say object, I don't mean meteor or asteroid or something like that. I'm talking planet-size object, Mars-size object. Something whacked into the Earth, knocked out a big chunk of the Earth, and that piece ended up forming into our moon. Now, I know that can seem kind of foreign, like a kind of weird idea to you, but what we've done is we've studied geology of our Earth, we've studied geology of our moon, and we're trying to piece together the puzzle of how this happened. And it looks very likely that the stuff that the moon is made of is the same stuff that the Earth is made out of. So it's tricky because no humans are here, but that's one of the reasons we want to keep studying the moon. No humans were there, when this collision happened, but say our future trips back to the moon, maybe they'll give us a better idea of more of that lunar geology. So the best idea about how the moon formed is that it used to be a piece of the Earth.
That's pretty cool. Okay, for the next story, it's going to involve something else. And I don't know, Nick, I think we should show some. You might notice there's a hazy band of light passing across the sky. Might be a little subtle. And
let's maybe we'll brighten it up in a moment, but just in case you're viewing from a backyard with lights or something like that, let me show you just a couple of constellations that are in the neighborhood. of this hazy band that we're going to talk about. One that you might be able to find tonight is called Scorpius the Scorpion. You can find the bright red heart of the scorpion in Terry's. Kind of looks like a big J or a fish hook here. That one should be pretty visible if we have a clear night. Same thing with a shape that you find kind of in the neighborhood of the planets over here for tonight. To me, it looks like a little teapot. Maybe you see a handle, a base, a spout, a lid. That teapot is part of a larger constellation called Sagittarius. It's supposed to be a half man, half horse archer if we use our imaginations, but I don't know about all that. But I like to see a teapot because when you can see the Milky Way, it kind of looks like the steam is ready from the teapot. Couple more, just so that we have reference for this area of the sky. A really familiar pattern that we find in the summertime, we call it the summer triangle. And the summer triangle is 3 separate constellations. They each have their own stories associated with them, but we find 3 bright stars, Vega, Deneb, and Altair. And you can see, even here on our Stellarium screen, this kind of looks like a big pizza slice in the sky. And 2 of those shapes are birds, and one of them is a musical instrument. Cygnus is a swan, Aquila is an eagle, and Lyra is a harp or a lyre. So all that being said, all of these constellations that you could probably find are in the same direction tonight as the Milky Way. And I just darkened up our sky so that you can see this hazy band stretching through the sky.
Ooh. Okay, we'll say a little bit more about what the Milky Way is in a science way, but I've got a story for you. There are many great stories about how the Milky Way came to be. I wanted to share one with you from a storybook that we created for a bilingual project, Spanish-English project called Explora las Estrellas, Explore the Stars. And it's a whole kit of activities. And you can download the printed materials that are part of that kit for free at the Morehead Planetarium website. And we've just dropped into the chat what that specific URL is if you're curious to learn more about this project. There's also some videos at that site that are in Spanish that you can watch to learn how to use the activities. And there's also printed instructions in both English and Spanish. But I wanted to share a story from the storybook. And this is a story from Bolivia, and it's called Nuku the Worm. And so it's pretty short. I'll read it to you, and here's how it goes. Long ago, the sky was so close to Earth, it would sometimes crash into it and squash people. Now, there was a village where an old woman lived all alone, and nobody helped her with her land that she had for growing food, and so she often went hungry. And one day in her garden, while she was trying to collect some yucca to eat, she saw something shining among the leaves. It looked like a white worm. She named it Nuku and put it in a jug to feed it. And she took care of this worm like he was her own son. Within a week, Nuku, under her care, grew so much, he filled the jug. The woman put him in a bigger jug, but a week later, he filled up that jug. After 3 weeks, Nuku said to her mother, "I'm going fishing." He lay down across the river, and his body was so big, it dammed up the river, and the fish just jumped out onto the riverbank. The woman could then gather up the fish, and from then on, she had plenty to eat. People asked her, "You were starving last month. How did you get so many fish?" She didn't answer. Time passed, and the other villagers started to become hungry because Nuku was catching all the fish. And one day he said, "Mother, you should invite the people to come here to fish." And she did. And for a while, everything went well for everyone. Everyone had enough food. But Nuku had grown so big he could no longer fit in the river. "Mother," he said, "I need to move on to take care of the sky so it won't fall on Earth again. You won't go hungry again now because you have helped the people, and they will now help you." And then Nuku stretched across the earth from one end to the other and lifted his body to push up the sky. The old woman was sad to lose her son, but she was comforted because each night she could see Nuku shining high above her. He had become the Milky Way, and he continues to shine to this day. And I wanted to show you the picture because We have a fabulous graphic designer, Tana Rodriguez, and she made some art to accompany these stories. And if you're curious to know more about this story and where it comes from, there's credits that are on the storybook, and you can find this online at the website, the URL we just dropped into the chat. Okay, Nick, I'm guessing the Milky Way is not actually made of a worm, though.
You know, maybe it kind of looks like it, but it is not made of a worm. I think it's made of something even more impressive. So the real deal, the real science behind what the Milky Way in our sky is kind of a complicated answer. It's tricky because we are part of the Milky Way galaxy. A big city of stars, contains, over 200 billion stars, but we can also see it in a clear, dark sky. So the way that's happening is it has to do with Earth's position and the sun's position in the Milky Way. We are not right at the center. So I always think of our galaxy as being kind of shaped like a chocolate chip pancake. Imagine it's pretty flat. And this is a decent analogy because you can imagine that all those stars are like chocolate chips. So imagine we're shrunk down inside a chocolate chip pancake. Look up through the top of the pancake, you might see some more chocolate chips. Look down through the bottom of the pancake, you might see a few chocolate chips here. But if you look right through the middle, through the plane of that chocolate chip pancake, you're seeing all sorts of melted chocolate and gooey batter and all of that stuff. Well, in this analogy, that's what this hazy band through the sky is. We are inside of the Milky Way. So when we look through the plane or through the middle of the Milky Way, we see a lot more starlight. So even though it's not a worm, when you see the Milky Way in the sky, you're seeing the light from many, many stars that are just pretty far away from our solar system. And here in the neighborhood of Scorpius and Sagittarius, that's actually, if you're looking in that direction, that's towards the center of the Milky Way galaxy, where there's an even higher concentration of stars near our galaxy's core. So it's hard to wrap our heads around, but if you think of the pancake, it's kind of like we're inside of it and we see the light mixed together and bounce through gas and dust, and it reaches us as a really beautiful band in the sky.
Thanks, Nick. And I see there's a question. Glenn has asked if Deneb is a bird. And I wonder, could we put up, do you think your screen sharing could handle if we put up all the constellation pictures so we can see what Deneb is part of? So Deneb means tail in Arabic, and in fact, it is the tail of a bird. Cygnus, the constellation that it's part of, it's supposed to be a swan. So yeah, you got it. And if you prefer to imagine something else, you are welcome to.
There we go. There's Cygnus, the swan, and Deneb, like Amy said, is the tail.
Okay, and I've got one final story for you. We may roll through the night a little bit so you can see some constellations pick up. And it has to do with how all these stars got into the sky. This is a Coyote story. It comes from, it's a blend of oral narratives from different Native American tribes. And I think I originally learned this one from a native teller named Lynn Maroney. It's called Coyote Places the Stars, or Why Coyote Howls. See if you can figure out before the end of the story why Coyote howls. And also, while I tell this story, you might look around and see if there's a coyote constellation. So this is how it goes. Long ago, back in the time when animals could still talk, there were no stars in the night sky. In the daytime, of course, there was the sun, which is a star, and at night there was the moon, but some nights the moon showed only part of its light, and some nights the moon showed no light at all. And on those nights, it was dark. It was so dark the animal people couldn't see. They fell into holes, they lost their way, and they grew very scared. So they called out to their creator, "Creator, please help us, bring us some light at night." And Creator said, "Yes, I will help you. You must go down to the river and select all the small stones with sharp points." And so they did, and they brought them back, and Creator took one of those stones and placed it high in the sky, where it began to shimmer and dance and twinkle. It had become a star. And then Creator took several more of those stones and carefully placed them in the sky, arranging them into a star picture. Oh, the animal people, they were so pleased. They wanted to make pictures too, star pictures of themselves in the night sky. So Creator agreed that on this night only, the animal people could make star pictures. So the animal people gathered up all the stones they could carry, and they walked up right into the sky. Each one picked a different direction and began to diligently work on their star pictures. And then Creator called over to Coyote. Coyote, you will take this sack of extra stones, because the animal people, some of them are too small to have carried enough stones into the sky. So when they call for your help, you'll bring them extra stones so they can finish their star pictures. Well, Coyote took that sack. Oh, it was heavy. He dragged that sack behind him into the sky, moaning and complaining the whole time about how those animal people, they didn't really need his help. He wanted to make his own star picture. And why was this sack so heavy? So he looked inside. Well, no wonder. There were so many stones inside. So when nobody was looking, he reached in, grabbed a few stones, and just tossed them just randomly into the sky. Well, this went on all night. The animal people diligently working on their star pictures, and Coyote dragging that sack around the sky, moaning and complaining about how the animal people, they didn't really need his help. He wanted to make his own star picture. And why were the sacks still so heavy? And so he'd take a few more stones, toss them just thoughtlessly into the sky. Well, the night was coming to a close, and some of the animal people had run out of stones, but they hadn't finished their star pictures. So they called, Coyote, we need you. No answer. Well, what could they do? Dawn was breaking. They had to walk back down out of the sky. And when they reached Earth, who did they find but Coyote, asleep on top of an empty sack. He had just tossed all those stones into the sky. And that is why when you look up at the sky tonight, you'll see that in some places the stars make pictures, good ones. They look like something. Other places, the pictures don't look quite complete. And in some places, it looks like somebody just thoughtlessly tossed the stars there. But when Coyote looks at the sky tonight, he will moan and he will howl because he forgot to make his own picture. So as an epilogue, you might look around. Nick has done a little sky magic there. It looks like we've got the sun rising, but he's left the other stars up too, so you can still see the constellations. You might look around and note, I don't know, I don't see any Coyote constellations. Nick, what about you?
I don't. I see some interesting animals. Lepus the hare, Taurus the bull.
Oh, some dogs just wrote. A dog.
Yeah.
Ursa Major there.
Even a unicorn, but I do not see a coyote. I see a dolphin. Delphina.
So constellations, here's our scientific epilogue. These are human inventions. We humans made these up. The human brain, we love to look at things and see things in them and make up patterns. So these constellations, these connect the line drawings and the artwork, that's all the human imagination. And you could play connect the dots in different ways if you wanted to. You could imagine, if you want to imagine a cat where that dog is, or, you know, it's fine. It's up to you. The only thing official about the constellations is the names, because astronomers have agreed on the names so that we can talk to each other around the world and we know what part of the sky we're talking about because we're using the same name for that area of the sky. And they've agreed on the boundaries, which Nick has just added. So you can see that everything in the sky is part of some constellation. Nothing is left out. And there are 88 total constellations.
And just to demystify the magic a little bit, if I bring us back to a normal sky, you'll notice it's daytime, you can't see the stars, but the constellations are still there. That's still the direction that these stars are in. We just can't see them because the sun's light is so bright. So this is maybe what your true daytime would look like.
Oh, Nick, I see lots of great questions here. We've got another minute or two. I see a couple I've got my eye on. See if there's any that you want to tackle here.
Ooh, I see a really good question about the Milky Way, since we were just talking about that a moment ago. The Milky Way is light from many stars. So what would happen if a few of the stars went away? How much would that affect it? If it was just a few stars, we probably wouldn't notice a big difference. And it's totally possible that some of those stars in the direction of the Milky Way do go away to our eyes. They might end their lifetimes as stars. We've talked about that in some past sessions, how stars have really long lifetimes, but sometimes they end. So it's possible that some of those stars in the direction of the Milky Way go away. It would take a whole lot of them going away for us to notice a difference, because we're talking about billions of stars, which is just a really big number. That's a cool thought experiment to think about. What would it take to change how the Milky Way looks? It would take a lot.
Okay, and Nick, I know we're just about out of time. I've got my eye on this one that says, why are people called Pisces and all of that? Yeah, that is a great question. We actually spent 30 minutes answering that question in a previous session. So I encourage you to look on our YouTube channel, the Morehead at Home playlist, and find the one that's about the constellations of the zodiac. The short answer is that over the year, the sun appears to be in front of different constellations. And those are the constellations of the zodiac that the sun appears to move in front of. And the sun is in front of a given constellation on a particular set of dates. However, the dates that you might think of as being associated with the zodiac constellations, those have all changed since the astrologers set up their system. I'll just leave it at that, and you can watch that whole 30-minute video if you're curious to learn more.
Wow, these are great questions. That's a really good question. And kind of on that note, our time is up, but we do have some resources for you if you're looking to continue learning a little bit about space today. I would highly recommend checking out the Explora Las Estrellas page that we linked in the chat there if you would like to learn a little bit more about that project. But if you have any other interest, feel free to go to www.moreheadplanetarium.org. There you can navigate to the Morehead at Home page and find all sorts of resources. I, in particular, am really excited about our Hidden No More content, so maybe try to find that for yourself. But as Amy mentioned, if you're interested in watching these sessions again or revisiting something we've done in past sessions, we have a YouTube channel. So just search Morehead Planetarium on YouTube, and you should be able to find recordings of all of these sessions that we've been doing live from home. We also have social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. So feel free to keep up with us that way. We will be back with you here on Thursday at 10 a.m. And until then, have a great rest of your day.
Bye, you all. See you Thursday.